maybe we could dive into some quick intros for anyone that's not acquainted with Human or with Glassboard.
In terms of intros, I'll give my 15-second intro. I founded and own an agency in Boulder, Colorado called Human Design. We were founded on the premise that we could elevate human experience by the things that we make. So we really focus on making things that people want, value, or feel, and trying to do that through purpose. And that's led us to know and learn how to create those things. So I'm excited to share some of the small tips and tricks and how we do it today.
Man, that's gonna be hard to follow up. Well, I'll try. I'm Grant, everybody. I'm one of the original founders and current CEO here at Glassboard. We're a hardware product development company. So we also help people, bring things in the world, but all folks in the physical space. So medical device, consumer electronics, things with atoms, as we joke. And I got into this because I was a nerd, not because I had any altruism or higher level vision of myself. So I just like to play with toys and hire people I like to work with. So that's how I got here at Glassboard.
And I like to be hired by people that I like to work with. That's how I joined Glassboard. But no, I'm Ben. I'm director of product at Glassboard. Started out my career in medical device and then got into product development consulting. Education was in mechanical engineering, but kind of became an understudy early in my career with a lot of industrial designers, fell in love with that side of the world, and kind of been blending the two ever since. Well, I can maybe introduce us to the topic today, and then we can dive in. I know we have a couple slides. We can go through them all or just let it be conversational. But it is just a conversation. Anyone that's here that wants to drop anything in the chat, we'll keep an eye on it. Feel free to fire over questions. We can respond to them in real time and make this just a good live back and forth on the topic, which is, we called it the audience first playbook. But this really, I would say the catalyst for this was just organic conversation that Grant, John, and I were having on where we feel like folks missed the mark on that early stage connection with their audience, their customer set, and digging deeper there. And I'd say from Grant and I side on the physical product development side, it is a risk mitigation effort to make sure you don't go, spend the next months or years of your life developing the wrong thing. And almost always that has to do with the people that you're building it for and your understanding of those people. So that's how we come into the topic. And I know, John, you kind of have your own lens and framework that you come into the topic through.
Yeah, it's, when you talk about risk mitigation on the product side or on technology in general, there's this term that a lot of people know called technical debt. And obviously you're trying to reduce, how do you keep that to a minimum before you get to a thing that will have product market fit? And that's the entire goal. So we're going to create a product that we believe people will want, but how do we do that as cost effective as possible without creating debt? On the storytelling brand side, the same thing happens. I call it brand debt. A brand launches and they feel like we can fix the brand later. We can fix the aesthetic of the brand later. But what sometimes has failed to be understood or remembered is that every visual element has residual effect, both immediate and long lasting. As soon as you see something that signals visually what the brand espouses to be, it's really hard to come back from that. It's really hard to ask people to unsee what they've seen. It's really hard to ask them to unhear what they've heard. So when brands sometimes are so focused on tech or the feature set and the functionality at the expense of form, that's pretty painful. So on our end as well, we're trying to really work with clients around, yes, you want to ship a minimal viable product, but you can't go too minimal because it affects everything. It affects the accuracy of your testing. If you test something and you're asking or you're monitoring how it's received in the marketplace and it might not be received very well, how much of that is because you went too minimal? You left out potentially a key element that creates emotional connection with your audience, that in lieu of having the element, the feedback may be, I don't know if I'd buy this. I don't know if I'd use this. I don't know if this really resonates with me. And, in our experience, we might take that as, oh, well, this product might not have fit. It might not be as desired. Well, in reality, we may have trimmed it down so much that the MVP is too minimal. So, we talk about minimal desirable product. How do you create an MDP to where it's the minimum amount of desire, where we have to be able to measure, is this thing desired and wanted with what we put out in the marketplace from a brand and a design standpoint as well. And of course, you could argue examples either way, where brands that launched with terrible aesthetics still succeeded because they solved a painful enough problem, and there would be no disagreement there. I think what you'd have to look at is, well, how much money extra money, time, effort, energy did it take for that to be successful? So most anything could be successful if you give it enough money and advertising. But how do you keep that to a minimum?
When I think about my role as director of product, I think it is largely one of protecting our clients and ultimately their customers in the endeavor of making sure the right thing gets built. And I think the hardest thing about my job is exactly what you said. What does the M in MVP represent, and how do you make sure you don't overshoot or undershoot what that represents for that first build? I think that is the most nebulous piece to get right when it comes to brand or product development.
As in piggybacking on that, I think the takeaway I had is there's a certain critical mass is the word I'm going to use. Critical mass of feature sets that a product needs to solve the core problem, right? To be the magic moment with the user of this thing makes my life better or it's more pleasurable to use. Equally, there's a certain critical mass of design, of beauty, desirability in the way it visually comes off that you have to hit in your minimum viable product or minimum desirable product. And it's so hard to find what part of the design or what part of the feature set is that magic moment, like critical mass, because you will have clients who have, or we've had clients who had an amazing product, like solved immense pain point, awesome thing. The user experience kind of sucked because it was just ugly and it didn't go well in early tests. And they could have probably spent, I don't know, Ben, 5% more time, effort, energy in industrial design and 40% less time, effort, energy, and engineering to overcome that first study, that first user interaction, and get good feedback instead of it does do the thing, but man, I hate it.
Yeah, it used the word magic there. That's a word we use a lot early stage. And I think our engineers hate me for it. But a question I love to ask is, if your product was magic, what would that mean? Because it takes this like abstraction layer away from how does it actually work, and it gets people to answer the question, why should it exist in the first place? What's the problem that you're solving? And I think that is what harkens back to the audience piece that we're talking about today, right? Like, who are you designing for, and what problems do they have? Let's see. The first slide we have here, first prompt, is how to find the right audience early. John, how do you think about it?
The right audience is so key because obviously we want to make sure we're talking to the right people. And the key word in the sentence is right. So we tell our clients it's not our job to be right. It's our job to help find right. And that's across the board, right? No pun intended. That's across the board of making sure that we are having the right conversations in the right rooms, most importantly, with the right people. And so when we talk about finding the right audience, we have a model here that is an extension of Simon Sinek's why model. Most everybody, unless you're under a rock, understands start with why. The premise is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that changed the way I viewed business when it came out, however long ago, 15 years ago-ish. It really changed my perspective to find the why behind everything. As I've progressed in my career and as a human, we're 13 years old as an agency. What we've seen is the next evolution of that is the fact that not everyone will buy your why. They might buy your what, they might buy your how. As much as I would love to think that my mission, my purpose, my why is the driver for you to choose me, it might not be. It might be price. It might be convenience. It might be what we do. So what we talk about is asking who. So you start with why, but you ask who. Who are we serving? What do they need? And I said it earlier, but our model is identifying what do they value? What do they feel? What do they want? And it's just our extension of Tim Brown's model, IDEO. They're giants in the game. They set the stage. They changed the game. And they talked about making things that were feasible, viable, desirable. And those are all very valid terms. They just not feel very human to me. It wouldn't pass the significant other test, meaning I would not sit at dinner with my wife being like, well, is this desirable? Is this viable? Is this feasible? I would just talk more human. Well, do people want it? Do they value it? Do they feel it? And then when we make the thing, how do we make sure that we're talking to the right audience so that we're not wasting our time and we're not wasting other people's time as well? We want to make sure we're having the right conversation. So when we talk about finding the right audience, some of the stuff I just talked about was philosophical. Now, when you talk about practical, there are things like Polefish that we've used in the past. Now Polefish integrates AI. You could throw up a real quick test, and you can go in and you can run a poll saying we're going to make a product, and our hypothesis is that a product that does X solves this problem, therefore people will want it. And you throw that up on Polefish and you say, we want to run it against 500 people. And this is where finding the right audience is key. The best thing to do in our experience is you do not filter that audience based off of demographics. You base it off of attitudes. So rather than saying, we're going to target a demographic of 18 to 24, skewing male, this much household income, their total income's this, their tech savviness is this, their time on social media equals X. Those are all demographics. There's no intimacy in any of that. What we target is what are their attitudes, because their attitudes and their actions should be based on their values and what they want in life. And it should be based independent to a large degree, independent of their demographic. My attitude might have nothing to do with my age. It might have nothing to do with where I live. On the flip side, it may have everything to do, but hopefully it doesn't. I mean, hopefully my attitude towards life and my value set is independent of my age. You know, my values should be the same as a 24-year-old as a 44-year-old. Those values shouldn't change. So rather than talking to 24-year-olds versus 44-year-olds, talk to someone with a certain value set. So when we talk about finding the right audience, when we get to that practical side of let's run a poll and Polefish, let's do it based on attitudes and values, not on demographics. And that way we start to get different data because, as we all know, data in equals data out. If we start 1 degree off on our surveys, it's like putting the rocket on the launch pad and it's 1 degree off. The rocket launches, by the time it hits the moon, it's 500,000 miles off target. That 1 degree is the difference. So we have to make sure that we're asking the right questions and that we're not polluting the data coming back, because 1 degree off in the question set gives you wrong data. And suddenly you're like, hey, the data came back and it says the audience actually wants to be talked to this way, not this way. And then instinctually, you may feel that there's something off on that just as a human. And you may be like, I know the data says that, but it doesn't feel right. It's not congruent with my experience. And obviously it's an N of 1, right? My experience, but it just doesn't feel congruent. Like there's something instinctually off. And then the team starts looking at, well, how did we ask the questions? And then you go back to the questions. You're like, oh, well, the way we phrase that question was either leading or is too demographic focused, not attitude focused enough. So finding the right audience to us is, making sure that we're finding things that people value, feel, want, making sure that we're basing on attitudes and values, not on demographics. But I'd be curious on your guys' thoughts on how you find the right audience.
Well, one of my questions is, what kind of audience are you looking for when you're early in product development, right? Like I've got conflicting inputs from different, experts in my life. Some of them say you need to go look at what the general population is. Don't go be hyper specific. Don't go get data on your beachhead market, because you never can make a profitable company on just your beachhead market. You need to go see early on whether the macro market is going to resonate with this thing. And then other times, like, no, only care about the first 100 or 10,000 users, depending on what scale your company is, right? Not your first million or 10 million users, because they're the ones that will shape the product and, torture it into greatness that turns it into the third generation product that everybody loves. What is your take on that, John?
It's a really good point. Some variables that would have to be decided by the product or the brand would be, to your point, what's that bell curve and where are we hitting? Are we hitting early adopters? And we believe that play will be better for us long term because those early adopters are followed by the masses and they're influenced by the masses. So those early adopters who we go after, or is it that middle ground where we need to get to scale fast and we want to hit that middle swath? And if we hit that middle swath, we might not eventually we could be viewed as a leader, but it's going to cost more time to be viewed as a leader. Because if you start off being beige and you get a large swath of the audience and they love beige, and then you come out and you say, now we're premium, or now we have this other feature set, you're going to pull some of those beige users into that premium set. But again, it's what brand debt did we create? Are we not known as innovators, but we're known as we just produce beige things. And now we're saying we produce premium. So it also depends on how patient can you be as a brand. If you say success 2 years from now looks like us being viewed as the only brand that does X, and we are known for doing it at a premium level around Y quality, then that should be your starting place. And then you back cast from that point in time. 2 years from now, what success looks like is we are known as this. Well, let's back cast to how we got there. And as you're back casting to that, you have to have room in there for how much capital might you need to deploy and put into the business to keep it alive to get there. Because if you're a business that's dependent on driving revenue and having your customers foot the bill to get you there, that's going to change your decision making. But if you're like, well, our customers, we need to have them pay 50% of it, but we've raised enough money on the front end and we think we'll do Series B 12 months from now to pay the other 50%. And it also affects how you talk. So I know it's kind of feels like maybe a political answer. I think it really goes back to what is the thing that we're going to be known as the only brand for 2 years from now? And how do we get there in the cleanest, fastest path possible? That will dictate the audience that we talk to now, 12 months from now, 24 months from now. And then that will also dictate how we activate the audience and ask them to get involved.
Yeah, I possibly have a hot take on this one as well, answering your question, Grant.
Yeah.
I think where it may be true that you couldn't be successful without the mass market appeal, it would still be true that I don't think you can get to that mass market appeal without going through your beachhead. If you can't reach those early adopters, you're not getting to everyone else.
Right.
So I think, is everyone familiar with Nothing as a company? They're building phones, watches, earbuds. They're going up against the Apples of the world. They built a super specific design language, and their brand is built on being kind of on the frontier, a bit edgy, kind of subculture. They're not going mass market appeal. They're going for the tranche of their beachhead, those early adopters that this resonates with, which skews, I think, probably younger people that associate themselves with a bit of creativity, things like that. If I were a betting, and they're having great success doing it, if I were a betting man, I would say you're going to see, I hate to call it like a watering down, but I bet over the next 5 years, if they continue to see success, they're going to kind of have this like blanding of their brand to enter that more mass market appeal. What they have today is very specific, but I think it was the entry point. It was the sharp point of the spear that got them in to penetrate the market. And now they're going to land and expand. And with that comes a bit more kind of broad strokes where you might have to adjust or adapt your brand to it. I think of another example like Viore clothing, if folks are familiar. They were initially known as like hyper specific athletic wear for yoga. That it was that only, and now they're mass market, Lululemon competitor, mass market appeal, and I think that those tend to be, when I think of the success stories, I think of people that had a really strong identity, stayed really true to it to the point of that early success, and then found the strategies to bridge that to the broader audience. But they really knew who they were designing for initially. That seems to be the repetitive case in the success stories that I look at.
Sorry, I was just going through Nothing's all their products, and their brand language is just distilled. It is. You can precise. See it 10,000 miles away.
Yep, exactly that.
Almost, Ben, you follow Marathon, Bungie's new game that had a bunch of controversy because they stole the art? It feels a lot like the art style in that game. It's this really interesting subgenre right now, yeah.
The game's called Marathon?
Marathon, yeah. Very intentional art style. And ironically, that there was a big, it got ripped from an artist who was posting publicly, and it got copied. So, one of those things that they got caught doing it, which is fascinating in the world of design and the world of actual art. That, we all think it doesn't happen, right? 'Cause who would go rip something, but they got caught with their hand right in the cookie jar.
Yeah. I mean, something else you brought up, John, that I'm so glad you did is sort of this difference between demographics and at least what we call like psychographics. But the difference between demographics, okay, I know your gender and your age range. It feels more like a census report than it does actually knowing someone on the other side of that. Like when our team puts things together, we think about psychographics. So we go into all the way down to like, what kind of shoes would this person be wearing? What book would they be reading? We create these personas that are really tapped into people's core beliefs, what keeps them up at night, what they dream about, like those types of things, which might seem fluffy to a degree, but to me, brand building is about the community that you draw in and the people that you're connecting with. And there's a tool in this world that I think people are not using. So there's a lot of SaaS tools for doing audience or customer research and things like that. But I think something that people aren't tapping into as much is actually social media. Like, make a burner account on TikTok, on Instagram, on Reddit. Join these communities. If for all the bad that the algorithm is, it's really good at tapping into subcultures and getting you visibility into these communities. And you can actually engage with them. You can respond to comments. You can read through all the comments. You can start to produce content and actually put something into the community. All while you're still trying to find your footing on what it is that you're trying to build for these people, but you're at least now interfacing with those people. It's just it's a tool that seems right in your face, and maybe it's so right in your face as to not be seen by a lot of folks for this stage of the game.
Yeah, I think that's really cool point, because obviously the first place you'd probably go is like AI. Can AI create a burner account, go post on your behalf as a brand? Obviously there's all these tools out there that do that, and that can impersonate humans. I think you just have to then figure out, I like the idea. You have to figure out how far do you want to go with it, and what are the rules of engagement from the burner account. And maybe the simplest rule is the account can only inquire and ask questions. It can't provoke or prompt. It cannot go out with a point of view, because at that point it's not a real thing. It's just a point of view. It's like, I think this, I believe this. It's like, no, you're trying to influence, you're trying to throw out a point of view, you're trying to provoke.
Right.
Versus if it's just pure inquiry, and it's just going to these, and it's just listening, and it's just asking questions like, oh, what is it about that experience that you loved? What is it about this part of subculture that you feel is really important to whatever? And then that way you're using the tools to learn about humans versus influence and provoke humans. So if the tool can do that, then I think it's really cool. Steve was saying guerrilla accounts can get you personal personas, but what about if your target is a company type? So what if your target's B2B?
Oh, I think
it still applies, right? I mean, we live in a media economy. Everyone is putting their thoughts and feelings out there, even at the company level. And I would also argue companies, at the end of the day, are just a cluster of people. It's still just people that make up that company.
And I get more explicit. It's ironically, when you're trying to target a company, there's a specific kind of person in that company, a VP, a director of product, depending on who you're trying to sell to, right? That you not only need to hit that right archetype of person, there's one of them in that company. Bob, who works at company A and is the person you want to talk to, might have a completely different interpersonal type than Jeremy, who works at company B. And that is, it gets really hard, right, to figure out how to break into that. And I think what you have to answer for yourself is, this person, when they're at work, is in this role. The role is trying to solve problems of similar company types. How can you intersect their wants and their needs in a way that is authentic to the role and not to the person? Unlike all of us that are selling product to individual end people at the end of the day, right, John? Like you and I and Ben are mostly talking about an end user of a device, and certain kinds of people use this, we want to use this device or envision this device being best fit for them. When you're actually solving a company problem, it's not a personal thing at all anymore. It is, how does this company's operating system, this company's emotional system, their political system work, and what is your value prop for that role instead of that human? And I think it's a very different way of trying to break into somewhere in B2B versus direct to consumer.
And it's a little, sorry, I was going to say, it's a little cliche now. I've heard other people say it, but my company's called Human. We named it 13 years ago, and we would, like 10 years ago, be talking about this very thing with clients where they're like, well, like a lot of your storytelling is direct to consumer. How do you help a business talk to a business? Mm-hmm. And then the joke or the response, the canned response was always, well, it's not B2C, B2B, it's H to H. At the end of the day, you're talking to human beings, and science has proven that 95% of decisions are based on emotion. They're rationalized later by logic. So even to your point, Grant, which is a really good one, you're talking to a person at an organization that has a pain that keeps them up at night, and they're trying to make a very fast decision. And even though they think that they're making the decision rooted and based off the precipice of logic, they're really not. Everything as soon as they hit your site, your brand site, there's all these emotions that flood them of, okay, they feel pro, they feel dialed in, they feel like they're solvent, they're going to be around for a while. If my company invests in these guys, they're not going to go out of business in 6 months. There's immediate feeling to just all those things that are not, let me go to the product feature page and look at pricing, licensing, that. They're immediately forming an opinion based off of everything that you're showing them. before you get to telling them.
Right. Well, and to double click on what you said is these people have personal pains within their role, which ironically could be counterintuitive or even a counterculture against what is good or bad for the company. Right. If you can solve every, I'm going to use the word director of products problem, but ironically your solution is actually way more expensive for the bottom line, but you're targeting directors of products and you make their lives better, you're probably going to get good sales. Right. And I think that's the irony of individual users usually spend their own money, unless you're buying a cell phone, in which case you're spending your carrier's money, like AT&T's money, or you're buying healthcare and you're spending insurance's money. Most products are bought by a human. Most business products aren't bought by the person who actually writes the check. And you're actually trying to sell someone a dream or a vision or get their buy-in, and they are not the end user who is going to write that check. They just have to convince the next person. So I think, Ben, one of the things that you're just explicitly answered, not Ben, Steven's question is, how do you target a company type? You can absolutely do that on LinkedIn with a Gorilla account and, search tools out there that can get you the, LinkedIn accounts of the people that have all these roles, and then start listening to what they say. What are they complaining about? What are they posting positively about? And from there, you can build a persona that isn't about the human, it's about the role.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe just to put a sharper point on the term gorilla was thrown out there. I guess when I was going through the social media example, we've never actually broached the point of, truly fake accounts that are engaging with people or commenting or messaging or things. We call it social listening. And it's effectively doom scrolling for productivity's sake to get to know a culture. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where we've taken it. And I think, to Grant, to your point, it doesn't need to be this totally abstracted thing at the company level. It's actually quite similar.
Very much so.
The next one we've got here is actually connecting with that audience, which we might have already started to dip a toe into in all of that conversation. But John, any thoughts on this one when it comes to actually, now you've found it, the dog's caught its tail. What do you do once you get there?
Yeah. So there's two areas. There's size and duration in which we want the connection to be. So there's, now that we've caught the audience and we have the right audience, how much do we believe we can scale that audience, meaning, grow the audience, as well as how deep can we go with that particular audience? So if we caught them on a particular pain point that we solved for them, how do we convey to them that us solving that pain point was not just a one-off? And it was not just something that we purposed to do to drive revenue, which is, of course, I'm a capitalist. We all need to make money so we can make more products. Like Walt Disney said, we don't make movies to make money. We make money to make more movies. So we all have to make money. But how do we connect with that audience in more depth of scale to convey that this is the first of many problems that we want to solve for you? We have a design system. We have the ethos, we have a value set, we have a process, and we have a design system and a design language to ensure that the next problem that we solve will be equally as important, equally as simple, equally as beautiful. And you can start to trust us as a brand that everything that we produce for you will live up to that set of standards. So you're connecting at scale depth, and then how do you scale broad? So in our experience, our recommendation is usually once you find that right audience, double down on who you have. So love the ones that you're with and try to scale depth first. If you had to pick, scale depth first. So you grab the audience rather than being like, great, we just had 3 people decide they want us. How do we get to 10 people? If we had to pick, we advise our clients, now that you have those 3 people, how do you deepen the relationship with those 3 people? Don't worry about getting 7 more people in the mix. Deepen the relationship with those 3 people so they can go do the work on your behalf. They can go tell other people. And it's all word of mouth. And it's all the things that we've known about forever. But deepen that relationship. That's how you scale. Initially, it's through depth. Then you go wide. Now, if brands have enough money and they're bold enough and they want to go both at the same time, you do that. But you never do it at the service. You never do it at the disservice of going deep. So when we talk about audience at scale, that's what we're really looking for. Because the people that really, really fall in love with your brand and you become the beloved brand for X, they're going to scale you way faster than you putting more fuel in the fire and being like, hey, that messaging resonated. We got 3 people, put more money in the mix and get it to 10. I'd much rather put more money in the mix with those 3, do little things that surprise and delight those 3 people, and you're gonna hit that hockey stick curve faster. So that's kind of our approach to connecting with audience at scale.
Yeah, and it seems like I mean, it's a different question, but that answer at least feels like a callback to the beachhead mass market question as well, right? Like going deep.
Yeah.
Grant, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but maybe one very explicit tactic here that we've seen on the product side for connecting with audiences and scaling it is building in the open. When we have clients that make it a point to as early on as possible start sharing their story. One cool thing about the moment we're in, I think, is authenticity really does win. And when we have folks that are willing to just be transparent about the process, I mean, it's almost like people like to see the failures even more than the wins. You're going through prototyping, this broke, here's what we're doing next. But the folks that are building in the open, we've seen have great success, start to build that community, and then tying it back to your point, John, the people that were in at that stage, then when you do succeed, you find your footing as a brand, as a company, those people that they almost feel a sense of pride. Like I was there day one and they're never leaving. Yeah, exactly.
I knew them when.
It's really sticky in a lot of different ways.
Well, I think to piggyback on what you were going to say, what you just said, Ben, because I was going to say that and I had to think of something clever while you were talking. But to piggyback on top of that, I think the other thing that I've seen our clients do incredibly well is invite their audience into the conversation publicly. So instead of just trying to make great content or marketing or ads to get deeper or broader with your audience, open the door to your audience. Go post social media, shorts with a person who you reached out to on the internet that liked your post. Fly one of them in, have them use a prototype, film it, put it out there. Getting this organic that everyone can be a part of your brand. That is, again, the person you invite in should be someone who is your ICP, that fits your demographic and your sociometric and is that person. But man, inviting outsiders in and posting about that publicly, that this is a together effort, it is almost like reality TV for people watching it, right?
Yeah. It's almost like the psychology of a co-op. I think of like REI and like how their brand lands as a cooperative.
Mm-hmm. You
can do that out of the gate with some of the tactics that you're talking about there.
Yep. No, and this is the beauty of social media. As much as it's cursed traditional advertising and marketing, that craft of, TV spots are expensive. You need to really wow them with the money you're spending here. It's brought the investment so far down, but it's brought the engagement so far up, right? You can actually get into your communities and your audiences. And those are the engagements that scale. You can always scale with money. And John, love to pick your brain on this, that you can go raise money and throw it in the ad machine. But what I've seen be so much better is build that grassroots following that builds a self-sustaining marketing engine, right? Where people are interacting with the content, so it gets shared organically almost as much or more than it gets shared on ads.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're telling a really good story, there's two things. One, Ben, your comment about letting people into the journey, it's the hero's journey, rather than show everybody how the ending of Frodo throwing the ring into Mordor. There's nothing about that gets me feeling like I was part of it. It's just, there's the end result. But seeing that journey, there's something to that where you kind of connect emotionally with it. And all good stories, none of them close the loop for you. They'll take you 75, 80% of the way there, and they stop and they have you close the loop on your own. By doing that, it forces you to decide how you get involved. And it also, once you close the loop, you kind of feel like you're in on the secret. Like you feel like you're part of it. It's like, man, I figured that out. I'm part of this now. And how much more exciting is to go share something that you feel like you cracked the code on it and you figured it out, because now you have your own way of articulating it. Because that last 20% gives you your voice and how you articulate it. If we take you 100% of the way there, that's 100% of our voice. That's us telling you who we are, how to think of us, how to experience us, what to expect of us. So now everything in your mind, when you think about our brand, has been placed there by the brand. It's the brand's voice. My voice isn't in that at all. If you leave 20% room, 20% of it's now my voice. And it's however I want to think about it. And, we've seen this through a lot in the entertainment industry, but also music. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes if I hear a song and I love it, and then I see a music video for it, I'm like, oh, that ruined it. Because now I see how the artist wanted that song to be interpreted, and I don't agree with their interpretation of it. Like, my interpretation every time I heard the song was more fun. And now when I hear the song, I can't get that video out of my head. I'm like, I don't like the way that the artist interpreted their own music, even though they have every right to kind of tell me what the intent was. It doesn't mean I like it. So I think, yeah.
I think to pick up on that, the video game industry has struggled with this for a long time. So you're either telling a hero story and there's a main character to this game, or you, the player, are the main character. It's like one of the big ones was the Halo series. The main character always wore a helmet. Never ever was, no cutscenes, nothing with the helmet off. So you as a player could always put yourself in that position that could conceivably be you. And I think, John, what you're talking about the music is this exact correlation of leaving that space for me to personalize how I feel about your content or your product or your idea and put myself in it. Envision myself there instead of envisioning someone who looks or acts like me there. That you took my demographic and you showed me an ad with someone that looked just, like one of my friends. But I don't want to see one of my friends there. Maybe I want to envision myself in this brand, using this product in this space.
Yeah. It's a great way to phrase it. I like that phrasing a lot. Like, create the space, then just hold room and make room for that space and let your consumer fill it. And, I'll go there from an esoteric standpoint. When you talk about design, that's what makes design so potent and so tricky, whether it's product, whether it's brand, whether it's storytelling. It's such a fine line between creating too much and creating too little, you have to find that perfect balance, whether it's an MVP, MDP, storytelling, leaving space. How do you find that balance of finishing the design in a way that shows that you thought through every angle, but more importantly, you edited? I think it was Abe Lincoln. I'll attribute it to Abe Lincoln. Some people say it's Mark Twain. But that famous quote, which is, I would have, had I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. It's really, really hard to edit. It's really hard to cut things down. Because when you cut things down and you take things out, what is the result of that? Well, the result of that is you showing the world that you have confidence in the thing that you cut down to. You have confidence in your decision-making, your thoughtfulness, your taste, your judgment, and you have confidence in that. So you took things out that you felt were detrimental, and you're confident in that. And now I'm showing you sort of this simple, beautiful design. Take it too far, it's risky. Quick example, I teach at University of Colorado. I teach design there, and I always use this example with my students as an oldie but a goodie. When Google first came out, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna blow away Netscape and all the search browsers. It's gonna be super dead simple." And they did usability testing, and the page would load, and they would, of course, ask people, search for X or search for whatever you want. And they said for like the first 20 participants, people would sit there forever. They wouldn't do anything. And we're like, why are they not just clicking in the search box and searching? Like, it's literally right there. It's not Yahoo back in the day with all the links, all the stuff.
No, and his dial-up, so you would have to wait for 10 or 20 or 30 seconds for all the side pages to load before you'd search in Yahoo.
Totally. Well, and what they found was the feedback was people were like, oh, I was waiting for the page to finish. They thought it was still loading because it was so simple. They thought there has to be more. There has to be more loading. And so what they did, simple, I call it birdseed, but they just added stuff in the footer of the page. Copyright, Google, they just put that at the bottom to show you the page is done loading. And that was the fix. But they'd gone so far that people were like, oh, this is incomplete. It's still loading. So, you see that with some brands where they're like, we're going to deploy Swiss design. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be elegant. You're like, no, it feels like a really basic, it's so hard. And I know designers love to talk to other designers about how much talent it takes to make something beautiful and simple, but we talk about it for a reason. It's so hard. I can't tell you how many times either students at CU that I teach or designers I work with or myself, you present something and you're like, this is really beautiful. And then you come back the next morning and you're like, but it's boring. It's beige. It goes back like it's missing that one element that takes it next level. And it almost like if you cross too far to too simple, it suddenly feels rudimentary and like almost anybody can do it.
It's like elegant versus sterile in design, right? Like there's elegantly simple and there's sterile design that doesn't give you any emotion when you use it. And I again, the nice thing is I don't do this, so I can just throw stones here. I don't even attempt to do this because I don't have the taste for it. It's why I always have had a Ben in my life.
Well, that's why Ben's got all the cool tchotchkes behind him. So yeah. What about testing the ideas? Like before we waste months building, how do you guys recommend, or what would you say to anybody watching, listening? What's like a top 2 or 3 tip on how do you test without wasting?
I've got a one out of the gate, Grant. My hot take is you would be fascinated how many people you can get to come out of the woodwork for a $50 Amazon gift card. You can bring people to a facility to test things for something close to free.
They will get in a car and spend gas money to get a $25 Amazon gift card.
Yeah. We've worked on a lot of products. We've worked on a lot of medical devices. So we've run a lot of human factor studies where we have to recruit specific populations for testing. And not sometimes we can just tap into our own networks of people, but sometimes we can't, and we have to just go actually recruiting. So you can use insert digital tool of your choice for targeting specific audiences. But then being a real human and offering some incentive to come, it does actually work every time.
Ben in the pen.
Oh, sorry, I'm clicking my phone.
That's all good. But no, and my other favorite part, like to piggyback on that, is don't feel like you have to show a finished thing. My favorite thing that blows people's minds in hardware is how much Wizard of Oz we do at times. Like, we will do a fully empty shell prototype that we have hot glued steel shot into to make it feel like it's got batteries in it and got weight and got a circuit board, and there's nothing in it. And someone will use this fake remote or fake interface and hit a button, and someone in the other room is clicking to the right Figma page to bring it up on the screen that's in the room next to them that we're just screen sharing like on Google Meet with. And like, we didn't write any code. We didn't build a prototype. Like, it is truly test as early as you can with Wizard of the Oz style engagements that dictate what you should be building, and you should test before you build.
Yeah. So I love this because you should test as early and often as you can, as long as the testing is highly effective and cost effective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I say that. Maya Angelou, great quote. She says, people don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. They don't remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. If I were to ask the two of you to test something and you're going through the functions and I'm like, okay, I made a thing. It's called a triangle. And this triangle, the intent of this triangle is that both of you will feel a sense of calm after you experience my product, right? Like, most basic example. And I give you something to test with a triangle. You give me feedback, like, I don't like this about it, I don't like that about it, but you don't really understand what the purpose of the thing is. You don't know the whole point is to make you feel calm at the end of the day. Then as long as you're testing in a way that when you get the feedback, that you can compartmentalize and chunk the feedback, right? Okay, we got this feedback, but we didn't give them enough to get them to this feeling. Like, at the end of the day, we need them to feel this. And the testing was so small, it was so early, it was so whatever, that no matter how good of an experience they would have had with that test, it would not have gotten them to this feeling. And I feel like I just made a way too esoteric example, but the testing thing is such this weird thing where it's like, if you're designing, you guys are product guys, Glassboard, you guys design, build, prototype, make phenomenal products. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on with you guys, but it's the truth. It's like they say in Texas, it ain't lying if it's true.
Well, you're $20 later. Don't worry, John.
Yeah, I'll drive. I'll spend $15 in gas to get my $20 spiff. What's interesting is you have this idea like, okay, there are resident experts making a product, you guys. There are resident experts in the business itself that sells product. Hey, we've done our research. We know the product market fit. We know the total addressable market. We know all these things. We also, as a society that has centuries and centuries and centuries of previous human experience to draw off of, we know what I always say to our clients, that the things that don't change are as important as the things that do. You know, people hate being lied to. They hate when you're late. They hate bullshit, all this different stuff. So you as a business, you know human beings, you know what you need to make. You know the market, you're making something. At what point does your understanding of what you believe the market need cross over to what you're hearing from the market? And you get in a famous quotes of Steve Jobs saying, it's not our client's job to tell us what they want. It's our job to figure it out. You get famous quotes of Henry Ford saying you can have the Model T in any color as long as it's black. You have, in my class, I teach my students to CU, design instinct trumps focus groups. Like, and I use the example of Air on Share from Herman Miller. when they came out, is so groundbreaking. They're designing an ergonomic Aeron chair that all the focus groups just waxed it. This is super uncomfortable, way too many levers, it's super ugly, I don't get it, there's no cushion to it, this is going to fail massively. Every single focus group said that. Multiple tests. Thankfully, Herman Miller as an organization had the conviction to say, but they don't know what they don't know. And they had never been presented something better, and they're just not used to it. The last quote I'll throw out there is Helmut Esslinger, founder of Frog Design, for any of you design heads out there. Frog competes with IDEO, Smart Design, etc. Helmut Esslinger said, if it's good design, it's not understood right away, because good design is solving a problem that potentially might be a completely new solution. It might not be derivative of what you currently know or understand. So you have focus groups coming in to that test. They're bringing all of their current understanding to a new solution, a new problem, a new landscape. And when those things collide, it doesn't always go the way you want, because their time to test this product started literally 5 minutes ago, whereas our time to design it started 5 months ago. So now you have 5 months of design thinking hitting up against 5 minutes of have to get my head wrapped around this. Human dynamics of like, well, I know I'm being paid to give you some critical feedback, so I'm going to find something wrong with it. So my view of testing is like, yes, test, but be cynical of the test. Like, know your conviction before you go into the test, so that when the test results come back, especially if you are beholden to a client who's paying you a ton of money, or a stakeholder that's putting a lot of emphasis on this test, go into that test with a clear conviction of like, we know that we're cutting a corner that no one's ever been around before. So we already know that there's probably 15% of the feedback is going to be negative from the jump, because it's something they don't understand or that they don't know. So how do we take the test results and not dumb it down or filter it before it goes to a stakeholder, but how do we chunk it in a way where it's like, this sort of feedback, even though it views as negative, it's just due to a lack of understanding. The Aeron chair as an example. Now I'm sitting in one right now. I remember when they dropped, I'm an OG agency guy. I remember when they dropped in agencies back in the day, and it was so divisive. People be like, I can't believe you're paying $5,000 per chair for these ugliest things ever. But yeah, what's sort of your philosophy on how does Glassboard test? How do you take the results? How do you implement the feedback?
Yeah, something in what you said that sparked just a thought from me in terms of testing. I think about if anyone knows Virgil Abloh, fashion designer, but got into some product. He has this clip that goes around of him holding kind of a crushed up tin can. It looks like a Campbell soup can that just got crushed or something. And his point that he makes is like, hey, I'm holding this in my hand right here. Looks like a piece of trash. If I put it on a white pedestal in a well-lit studio, it looks like a piece of art. And my takeaway from that is like context is everything. Your environment is everything. And I think back to some testing that we've done. We worked with a brand that was, to make it simple, like doing some very novel things ergonomically with a product that just hadn't been done before. It was a totally new use case. And early studies, kind of like you mentioned, John, people were just fumbling, and we were like, man, like we thought we were onto something brilliant here. People are just like having a really hard time with it. They were a direct-to-consumer brand, very, social media content driven. And we went, well, people aren't coming into this blind. People are going to come into this product because they looked at this on social media first, because they saw the brand first. They're going to have some contextual awareness before they ever get hands-on with the product. Let's run an A/B. Let's have people actually watch a few of these TikTok reels first, and then let's let the product changed everything 180 degrees on the user experience because of the context that was presented. So I think to your point, you have to have people that are high conviction people that are empowered to make real calls and fly in the face of what would seem like contradicting data to get somewhere. It's something we actually see a lot with. I think we all kind of intuit that small companies are nimble, they run fast, and enterprises move really slow. It maybe is a cliche at this point, but there's some real boots on the ground truth to it, and I think it has to do with that. Small, tight-knit groups of people that are high conviction that actually have the authority to make calls. Versus design by committee, where things just get watered down and are all just completely data driven in that sense. So
I love what you said there. It's so key, which is context is everything. There's a great quote a long time ago. I went to this conference called Big Omaha. It's the best conference ever. Rest in peace conference, and rest in peace Virgil Abloh. Gary Vee was a speaker there, and this was like forever ago. is 15 years ago. And he said, content is queen, or content is king, but context is queen, and she runs the household. And it stuck with me. And he just said it real quick on stage. It wasn't part of, he never has a presentation. It just stuck with me. I was like, man, context is everything. And I love what you said there, Ben, which is it's also incumbent upon whoever's doing the test to educate the stakeholders that, hey, I am not leading the witness. I'm not trying to get to an outcome that I believe in. I am just purely giving them accurate context so we can get accurate results. Because sometimes in the testing, you'll have clients look at, how are you going to test it? And we've had this in the past where people are like, well, it does feel like you're leading the witness a bit. It feels like you're a hammer trying to find a nail and you're trying to get them a solution. It's like, no, we're not. We're just giving them proper context. So when they consume this banana on a wall with duct tape on it, that they're willing to pay $7 million for it versus feeling it and eating it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And the only last parting thought I'll have is I think the importance of depth versus breadth in testing is that you have to do both, right? Like you should do some real breadth with a lot of people, but you have to spend some time with some core users and let them spend time with you, not 5 minutes, not a 30-minute focus group. Come in every week and see what progress we've made. Have one or two, local users that you're friends with now, even if they're just your friends as a designer. Go get someone that's along your journey to help you build that, long-term. If you can convince someone to have the conviction alongside you, sometimes you need to find out how deep the rabbit hole goes to find out where the magic moment is for some other person to buy in.
Yeah. Well, and the same level of inquiry that a business does for users to test whether or not the user will buy this thing. That same level of effort and inquiry should also be done on the stakeholder side. We need to make sure that we are crystal clear on the stakeholder side of what conviction do they have? What are they expecting to get this? Because at the end of the day, my design director, Aaron Walser, phenomenal designer. I've worked with him for 15 years at multiple agencies. And he has this great saying that he says, design is a benevolent dictatorship. And it's just such a great way, because we've all, as designers, we've all talked about the genius design style of Steve Jobs to the collaborative design style of AI can give you feedback and that just cuts through. It's like design is a benevolent dictatorship. You have to have someone at the top that at the end of the day understands with enough conviction that they're like, yes, I hear the feedback here. I hear the shareholders wanting this. I hear my employee, but we are going here and this is where we're going and follow me there. And I'm taking all the stuff. But at the end of the day, we're going to get rid of the zip drive on the G3. We're going to get rid of the mic port on the iPhone, and usability testing me like, wait, you removed the ability for me to plug in my headset? Yeah, because we're going all in on Bluetooth. It's like, well, you're crazy. And it's like, no, we're not. We're just ahead of the game. And most importantly, you have to know, what are you okay with losing? So when you know we're going in this direction, we know that we will immediately have X% churn because people won't like it. They'll want the headphone jack. They'll want the thing. But we're going here because that temporary loss gives us a long-term gain. And that once the technology catches up to it, guess what? We're now viewed as the thought leader that knew this was coming 2 years prior. And we helped bring the whole category with us. And there's all these other things that play into that, like your ability to do that as a brand. The last thing I would say, because I know we're at time, all of it distills down to the fact that a conversation has to be had. The best things, like design has to be a conversation. In lieu of having the conversation, design always gets reduced to a veneer. You get a set of tasks and rules from the client. I want it to look like Apple, feel like Google, or feel like Tesla, perform like Google. Well, a design conversation has to be had around design. So what do you guys think for parting thoughts or wisdom?
No, I think that's good. Well, say
yeah. My parting thought would be just resonating with what you said, John. It's about a human connection and truly understanding the person on the other side. I think I grew up as a skateboarder. That was my community. It was a subculture that I was just deeply immersed in. And I can think of 1,000 ways to make a skateboard technically better and have another feature or a better performance, whatever. But like you said, people make decisions emotionally first. They justify them later. And skateboarders want their skateboards how they are today on purely an emotional basis, and don't try to throw logic into the equation. And I think that was a lesson I learned early that I carry with me through a lot of everything we just talked about here. So.
No, that's awesome.
What
And
about
I
you,
just follow
Grant?
Ben in the darkness. Ben's my tastemaker. I follow him in the darkness.
I
I'm
follow
the
Ben
engineer
into the darkness.
I'm the engineer that
Yeah.
has to go actually make it work when the physics are broken. Ben's the
Yeah.
one that makes people actually like it.
That's awesome.
John, I really
I like
appreciate having you on here and with Ben and I and chatting, and everyone listening. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone.
Take
Bye.
care.